My portion of our evening. Has everyone had a chance to sign up for this who wants to? Going once, going twice, what the hell? It'll still be here. I'll have the table in a minute. I'm going to call people up 3 at a time. You have 7 minutes. You know the rules. After 7 minutes, Mitch will applaud you off. He used to be our primary sound guy, but he's been taking it easy for a long time. Now he's kind of our bouncer. So. Our first reader of the evening is Travis Williams, followed by Isaac Tim, and then Amanda Lizader.
That was awesome. Hello.
Hi, Travis.
So I like spoken word poetry, and I'm going to try to do 3 real quick. The first 2 are pretty short. The first 2 are why you should talk more and why you should write more. The first one being the talk one. I do not speak enough. Lips stitched up tough. What if we were volcanoes that forever erupt and send larvae gathering dust, crusted jaws collecting ash from chasms of lava developing in the busts? When will you burst? Write so much, so that old is garbage. Get lost in what was once cautious. Cruising Maine, windy hair lawless. Words morphing into butterflies' notches, floating in subconscious. A bee sting is much different than a wasp's. So sunny listen if old and washed up. Clinging rivers' mosses are constantly being touched by the current. That's why I like old garbage. It reminds of the process. Turn old clay into muddy waters. Holding rhythm hostage, bow to homage to all whose alms is out that paint and scribble, not hung up on commas, red wrist carnage. Just writing. And this one's a little bit more personal about myself. And I don't like to have titles for anything, so yeah. Hard to write. I can never remember what side of brain talks to author. Even harder when I want to be a scholar and portray myself as smarter. After the key to stop, I will reveal the darkness of my past mind's dwellings. I've been concealing by not telling the swelling to drown. The yellings are so loud. This fan's drone is inhaling what is meant for my mouth, for I'm prone to be profound. More prone to be mildly mediocre. I smolder passions in my mind as I get older. To y'all, it's an invisible line. Never sure if I'm lying to myself. I just need to remember, act like a lion. Don't say you a stray cat, need a help. Sometimes I'm a fire, full of inferno, relying on myself, but I am burning. Camping on this internal cry, hard to determine the intentions and curses. Who to ask it when it smothers its own desires? Has God crisscrossed my wires, wired for self-destruction? The deduction of time laid out in dime bags, tequilas with lime, thinking it will alleviate the grime when it's such a waste to get wasted in the first place, and I should have been out chasing rhymes. Snorting lines instead of articulating them, spectating the participation with an asthma of the head, convoluting for frustration. Change channel for motivation, then see the other channels are broadcasting the same sin across their syndication. Hire a new CEO and say, it ain't easy here, but we hope. We can watch him go into the musty coiled smoke as it dissipates into splendid scenes of the rarely seen, inspiring, trapezed upon a thin, the curtain shutting in my missense.
Should have a more interesting sound.
Like a Jeopardy.
All right. Is that good? Okay. I hate setting down because I have no resonance. I'm like setting on my diaphragm. So it's just like, I just want to get up and like yell, but I can't. So on that reflection, my poems this summer have been very angry. And I'm not an angry person in general. I think it was something I was looking for. I've been writing these Caliban poems, and I was looking away from it. I didn't want to write anger. So then I wrote about a gorilla, and this is about Optimus Prime. I got this from a prompt from In the Palm of Your Hand. It talks about writing about fictional characters, anyone, like Count Chocula, and I chose Optimus Prime. Reflections of Optimus. Optimus Prime wouldn't admit it, but he never smashed a person on accident. Some part of him guided the sloppy sidestep that clipped a school bus off a bridge, an uncontrollable spin that crushed an old lady at a crosswalk. That time, Megatron hurled him down Fifth Avenue. He felt the crowd pop, his 18 wheels a fingernail down the bubble wrap, smearing them into pavement. When his brother charged, wishing to avenge old bruises, Optimus smiled sadly. How deaf his brother had become to the symphony of the dying. The power to jerk a steering wheel half an inch to the right, crush a jackrabbit beneath your wheels or not. Yeah.
So I have to tell you, before I start reading, just as I was walking out the door to come here, my 7-year-old son comes and he gives me a big hug. And then he steps back and he says, "Mom, you stink." Oh, thanks. He goes, "No, seriously, you smell bad." So first I just have to apologize. I don't know what's going on. Now that my confidence is out, I'll do it right. I'm going to read a flash fiction piece called What Goes Up. Hey, you know of any jobs? I gotta find me something. Tried working the production line for Lipser a while back, but it's too fast for me. At my age, you gotta take it slow, you know? Loved my last job though. Grounds custodian at the Fun Factory. Best job I ever had. I can smell it now. Popcorn, cotton candy, corn dogs, and a whiff of cigarette smoke. That's the perfume of fun, I tell you what. And the sounds? Man, that place had its own soundtrack. Bells and dings, crowd screaming, screeching brakes. It all mixes together into one big song, and I got the whole thing memorized. You'd think it changed from day to day, but it don't. I could tell you exactly when the tracks from King's Tower are going to cling, or when Clive at the ball toss is going to yell 3 tries $1. Best part was them little kids. Smile or wave to them, and they'd smile and wave right back. Not like their parents. I'm just landscape to them, like a tree or something. But them kids, you give them something small, like a balloon or something, them kids get so excited. Worst part of that job, though? Teenagers. They're the ones sticking gum all over the place. Like I'd see one of them with a cheek full, chewing it like cud. I knew sooner or later I'd be prying off the handlebar of the sky rail. We get these pretty young things. You know the type. Ponytails so high they bounce when they walk. They'd clear half an acre to avoid me. Get these disgusted looks on their faces like I just stepped in shit. First time one of them looked at me like that, I swear I checked behind me. Thought they must have seen something dead or something. Didn't realize they was looking at me. Anyways, the boys was punks. They'd sidle up to a trash can, but instead of using it, they'd just drop it on the ground while looking me right square in the eye. I'd just smile. See, I made it into a game. How many different colors could I sweep up in one spot? Let them be punks, I didn't care. But one day, these 2 young fellas step off the Aztec Adventure, laughing and bumping into each other like 2 drunk hyenas. Except I know they ain't drunk, they just mean. I kind of turn my back to them while I'm sweeping up. See, I don't want no trouble. But one of them calls to me. This kid's got these big zits all over his face. He was ugly on the inside and the outside. He yells to me, "Hey! Hey, retard!" I don't turn around. Just keep on sweeping. See, I don't want no trouble. The next thing I know, one of them's throwing this soda cup at me. Hits me upside the head, Drips down my neck, all over my shirt. "You missed one," says Ugly. And the two of them are really grabbing at each other, laughing so hard they can barely breathe, faces turning all red. I grip my broom so tight, I'm lucky it didn't snap in half. Anyways, I bend over to pick up the cup, but with these old knees, it ain't that easy getting up and down no more. So I don't see when one of them sneaks up behind me. While I'm all bent down, he takes his foot and he shoves me over. Skinned up my nose and chin. Maybe that don't sound so bad, but it was bleeding pretty good. 3 years on the job, and I'd never had so much as a paper cut till then. They're howling, and I've never been so mad in my entire life. But what can you do, you know? Can't do nothing, not a damn thing. So they finally go off, but I can't drop it. Really burning me up. So I start emptying trash cans, but I'm jerking those bags around and smashing the garbage down, thinking the whole time what I'd like to do to those two assholes. And the heat's just coming off me like a bad sunburn. Then all of a sudden, there's this horrible screech, and I knew right away something was wrong. Because of the soundtrack, you know? Like feedback on the recording. So I look over, and we've got this giant roller coaster. They call it the Almighty, third tallest loop in the nation. And them cars have stopped right at the very top. People all upside down there, their hair hanging down. And I seen those two punks in the very front seats. Recognized them because they had these colorful shirts, see? So I'm just watching them stuck there, and suddenly I can't hear the soundtrack no more. All I hear is my own heartbeat. It's beating faster and louder, faster and louder. Then I hear a click, and their restraints come undone. Not all the cars, mind you, just them two boys. They tumble on out, but somehow they grab hold, and they're hanging on for dear life. People start running around and screaming. I'm just calm, looking at them boys, looking like those monkeys in a barrel game. Finally, one of them drops, leaving Ugly up there all alone. He's trying to get both arms up, and for a minute, it looks like he's going to make it. But he don't. Makes this sound when he hits, kind of quiet, but I could hear it. Anyways, you don't have to see to know how it all ended. That's when I knew why them girls was so afraid of me. So I had to quit. Just couldn't risk nobody else getting hurt. Anyways, you hear of any jobs, you let me know. Maybe something with little kids.
Can I just say that some of Amanda's words are in here, and you should buy one of these. This is a cool thing. It's only $13. We're selling it at cost.
Amanda, what's your last name?
Newsaker.
Could you spell it?
Luzzadder.
Her name's in this book. You can
Isaac, I look forward to hearing Count Chocula. The whole time you're doing Optimus Prime, we've got the Transformers theme song going on in my head. It's working. You did really well. All right. Say that. Chad Van Zandt, Diane Hardy, and Tara Hawkins.
Hi.
Hi, Terry.
I just have an essay about fly fishing. Sorry. First of all, Johnny, I thought that was awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so Russ Beck and I work a lot on fly fishing and writing and stuff, and we're currently working with the radio station to do a series of essays about Utah. I think it's going to be called Utah Dialect, and it'll just be sort of place-based essays. If you have material like that, maybe polish it up and we work together to get it on the city. Tom Williams is working with it, and maybe just short little things, you know, like you hear on public radio, you know, when you're like half asleep driving down the road. This is going to be one of those. So this is one that I'm working on right now for that, with the idea of putting it in that project, and it's brand new, and it's called In the Fortress of the Sandhill Crane. I took Russ Beck fishing on Rock Creek because I knew once we got up there he'd say, "Good grief," which is what he says when he thinks something is really impressive. Like the time we drove to Montana to fish the Missouri River with our friend Brad. It was an 8-hour drive. Montana really is one of our larger states. It's number 4. After driving for 3 hours, we ran out of things to talk about, but we kept talking for another couple hours, just to be sure, I guess. Then Russ told me to find some music, and so I played some Joy Division. "Good grief," he said. He turned up the volume. "This is so good." We made it to Brad's house in Helena. Brad and Janelle let us stay with them and fed us homemade pizza. We sat on their living room floor watching TV and tying flies and eating slice after slice of the pizza. "Good grief, you guys," said Russ. "This is awesome, thank you." When Russ Beck farts, he just tells you. He's not embarrassed. I guess he doesn't want anyone to wonder who did it. So he just announces it. He was crossing the living room to get more pizza when he farted. "I farted." Everybody laughed. Janelle had a mouthful of food and she was laughing so hard her eyes filled with tears, and eventually she tipped over sideways because she couldn't breathe properly. To reach Rock Creek, you have to drive up the highway for a while, then drive on a gravel road a while, then a jeep trail, and then you walk a while. We drove up in my truck. The first part of the stream is a series of meanders, and each bend looks just like the others. 5 or 6 bends in a row, all alike, and each with at least 1 trout waiting, sometimes 2. The fish aren't too big in Rock Creek, but every once in a while you hook a big one, which makes you think highly of the smaller ones. We caught some fish. They were mostly cutthroats. "Good grief," said Russ. "This is gorgeous up here." This was back when Brad was still in school before he moved to Helena. He'd just written his master's thesis. I proofread the whole thing for him. Didn't charge him a dime. There was no way I could. He didn't have any money. But even if he did, I wouldn't have. It was that good. It was that interesting. It was all about how this part of the country has changed according to who was in charge at the time. First the Native Americans, then the European settlers, now us. His goal was not to lay blame. It wasn't an indictment. It was a record of the changes and of the stories. Stories about how our rivers were once so choked with cutthroats, the Indians could simply pick them up and walk away. Or the story of some fool who tried to plant salmon and eels and lobster in the Great Salt Lake. Brad said you can't live in a place without changing it, but by keeping records of the changes, we can be more aware of it and maybe be smarter about it. Brad said in his thesis this whole mountain used to be covered in pine forest. I told Russ this. Not sagebrush or juniper, it was all timber. "Can you imagine this whole place is just one big forest?" said Russ. "Good grief." The next part of Rock Creek is a beaver dam complex, a spread out pond with dead willow branches sticking up and the sun bleaching them out. At first we skirted the margins and tried casting into the middle, but it was hard fishing that way. The fish were always just out of reach, so we waded in. It was like stalking through a forest of bones. I saw a fish rising under the arching limbs of an enormous and deceased willow tree. There was no way I could ever cast there. There were too many willows. But I turned and went over there anyway, just to be sure, I guess. The water was up to my waist. I waded slowly so the fish wouldn't startle. Plumes of mud billowed up behind me. As I approached the big dead willow, a sandhill crane rose up and spread her wings. With one great wing beat, she was airborne, so close I felt the wind of it on my face. At first, I thought she was going to pounce on me and drive me back down into the muddy water. She probably could have. They're definitely one of our larger birds. But instead, she hung motionless for a split second in the air, brilliant in the sunlight against the empty blue sky, and then she wheeled to one side and flew away. She'd been sitting a nest down in the base of the big willow, whose branches were the pickets and battlements of her fortress. The beaver dam was her moat. I could have investigated the mound of her nest. It was right there. I could have gone over and peeked at her eggs or her young. But I became all at once aware of my own immense presence there in the stream, and it felt a lot like embarrassment. To have jumped the crane that way, to have blundered into her battlements. And so I backed up and I got out of the beaver dam. My boots and waders were black and slick with mud. As we walked downstream, back to the truck, we heard the sandhill crane's agitated chattering. She was up on a hillside behind us. She bobbed through the juniper trees and watched us, peculiar and yet graceful, waiting for us to clear out. Thanks.
I'll put the arm down for you, Diane.
I'll be helpless. Lot was a prophet of the Old Testament. He was instructed to take his family and flee the wicked city of Sodom and Gomorrah, which he did. They were told that they should not, any of them, look back. But as some of you may know, Lot's wife did. Lot. He left her there, a pillar of salt. To the mountains he did flee, with 2 virgin daughters scrambling behind, as God said it should be. 'Twas a cave in the hills they did find, a place where they could stay. Lot left the girls to tidy up while he went out to pray. Poor daddy, one gal said to the other, this really is quite a plight. Our mother's a statue of salt back there. With whom can dad spend the night? I think it's my call to do the Lord's work. It's my right. I'm older than you. When he drinks this wine, he'll lie with me. You can have him when I get through. An orgy raged on the mountain that night. Each gal played her part to the letter. In drunken splendor, Lot climaxed it all. Wife, you get better and better. Then the Lord looked down and said to Lot, look, these daughters you've defiled. You're righteous and you're clever too. Through each will come a child. This story is one not told in church. In the Bible you'll have to look. Revelation, scripture from the pen of God. The world's first dirty book.
I'm Tara Hoggins, and I have a few poems here. And the first one is called Ordinary Things. I fill my day up with ordinary things. I put one sock on, then another. I turn off the alarm. I fix oatmeal from scratch and open a can of pears. Half the pears go into the refrigerator for tomorrow. I write in my journal, I miss her. I meditate on her name. I do yoga with my socks off. I put my socks on again to check email. There are 2 from her. I visit the doctor and the food pantry and put away the groceries on empty shelves she left behind. For some reason, there is a lot of canned salmon. She doesn't like fish, but I do. The next one is called Ectogamete. Beauty is that skinny bitch who won't give you the time of day, who hides behind huge sunglasses and always carries a pink can of mace. Beauty is a ballerina arching her back, wearing a delicate floating costume, kicking you right where it counts and then in the head when you fall over. Beauty is that gang of girls you see on the dance floor, writhing together, stomping their stilettos, each one hotter than the next, but you see the leader and you want her. She won't drink your tainted drink. She won't eat your tainted meal. She'll look at you and laugh to taunt you as she dances away. Beauty is fierce about staying pure. She says never without my permission, and she means it. This one is a winter haiku, and I can't really say that it's definitely a haiku because I'm really bad with that. Anyway. Beautiful and foreboding, the mountains hibernate amidst the furious snow. And this one doesn't have a title. I used to sleep like the dead when I was a child. I'd wake up with no memory of the night, but so twisted in blankets that I had to call out to my parents. I used to have no fear of my father and only love for my mother. I used to cry unabashedly at anything that hurt me, knowing they would make everything better. I grew older, and the world pounded on all of us, furious and indifferent to our tears and laughter. Now I sleep light and remember every nuance of every dream. I wake and fold the unruffled covers back, my love for family woven tighter than boiled wool. And this is my last poem. It's about a young man I know. He's 16 and he's a cancer survivor. Everyone's gentle with Brian. He hoped for a blue cat. The cat is black, but he named her Rainbow. Brian carries tiger shark with him to class and counts down the days until Shark Week. Brian is too full to finish his dinner, but he wants dessert. His dad serves him cookies and cream ice cream. Brian talks smack with his dad before they play the same game every night. You're toast, he says. You're jelly, he replies. Brian always wins. The cancer is gone, thank God. Brian put it in jail, but the penalty was high, with his paralyzed face and his small stature, and everyone's gentle with Brian.
Has anyone suddenly had an attack of inspiration? What's your name? Okay, Parker, you will read last the names that I've got to pronounce. Marianne Witterberg, Julian Benyon, Ronald Jensen, Teresa Dyer. Okay, and then you will close it up. So here we go.
Okay. So I'm a little short, I'm sorry. So this is fiction. I don't usually write fiction. It's not great fiction, but it's okay. I'm reading it to you and then you'll know why I don't write fiction. Olivia hated her stepfather, and when he coughed into a stark white Kleenex and pulled away crimson polka dotted, she hated him even more. She knew the diagnosis before the general physician suggested a visit to an oncologist in Idaho Falls. Before she sat beside her mother in a reception area that smelled vaguely of bleach and synthetic living. Lung cancer. She'd done a unit on it in nursing care of this critically ill adult last semester. She mulled over the possibilities. Squamous carcinoma, adenocarcinoma, large cell, adenosquamous, small cell, sarcomatoid. It didn't matter how Dr. Huntington classified the tumors. Dave was going to die, and her mother, Ellen, would suffer. That was the only reason she was here today. She couldn't sit still on this thinly padded seat, with its vinyl stretched so tightly she could feel the metal corners poking through like jagged bones. She reached across the cold metal armrest and took her mother's hand. Ellen offered a small smile, more of a twitch really. Olivia wondered when her mother would become so old. The lines stamped around her eyes deepened with the slightest expression. Her hair, once a rich earthy brown, like Olivia's, now varied shades of gray and silver. Do you want a coloring book? Olivia scanned the empty chairs before meeting the receptionist's eyes. Yeah, you, honey. Do you want a coloring book? The platinum blonde said again, her red lipstick smile barely visible above the market. Olivia was used to people mistaking her for much younger. Though 20, her petite frame and habit of keeping her long hair tied back into a low-side ponytail made people assume she was between the ages of 12 and 14. But no one had ever offered her a coloring book before. Either this woman was unobservant, or she had serious delusions when it came to the appropriate age market for coloring books. Olivia guessed both. "No, I'm good," she said, standing up to retrieve a dog-eared issue of Time from the liquor table in the middle of the seating area. Whatever they'd used to clean the black and white linoleum had left residue, and Olivia's Converse sneakers would sound like gripping tape as she walked back to the seat. Her feet dangled a good 6 inches from the floor, but she opened up an article on the power of introversion and tried to look grown up enough that the receptionist would realize she wasn't a child. But she felt like a child, just as lost and small as she felt leaving San Diego 11 years ago. Her mother hadn't told her where they were going. She picked Olivia up from school early and told her they were going for a drive. Olivia saw the cardboard boxes crammed into the Buick's back seat, the same boxes Ellen had packed when Olivia's parents had separated 8 years ago, and Olivia and her mother had moved to a small apartment that smelled like stale bread and pencil shavings. Ellen's hands hesitated on the steering wheel before pointing the car north. "Mommy, where are we really going?" "Nowhere, sweetie, just for a really long drive," her mother smiled. But it couldn't reach past the shadows under her eyes. Olivia flipped around in her seat, hugging her in headrest. In the distance, skyscrapers stood firm and straight like granite headstones. Ellen turned down a residential street, and Olivia tried to count the tiled roofs peeking behind the stone gate, watched her last palm tree-lined sidewalks fade into pavement. "Olivia, put on your seatbelt," her mother said as she moved onto the road. Olivia sat down in her seat and watched out the window as the city turned into trees and finally desert. The drive was long, and Ellen didn't stop enough. Olivia pressed her forehead against the window, watched the asphalt rushing past, yellow and white smearing into black. Looking made her stomach sick, but it was better than seeing her mother's knuckles blister from her grip on the steering wheel, her gaze fixed between the lane markers. Olivia wondered if the broken lines could lead them anywhere but better than home they left. At some point, she fell asleep. When she awoke, Ellen was pulling off onto an exit that said Rigby. As they pulled onto an empty road, the lights of the lonely Wendy's flickered out. "Where are we?" Olivia rubbed her eyes with her fists. "You remember this place, Livy. We visited your Aunt Melody here a few years ago." Olivia shook her head. In the headlights, a small dense shrub her mother told her was sagebrush spread across the ground. Mom turned onto a side street, and Olivia counted the houses they passed on the way to Aunt Melody's, a mile away. 1, 2, 3. Until now, she hadn't believed her mother when she'd said they were going nowhere. I'll just read one more section. "Mrs. Price?" The young man in a lab coat looked up from his clipboard. Ellen stood up and Olivia followed. "Oh, I'm sorry," the man said. "Just Mrs. Price." Olivia slumped back into her seat and pretended to read her magazine. "Are you worried about your father, love?" The clueless receptionist again. Her lips drew into a frown probably meant to be sympathetic, but the red lipstick against the woman's pasty skin made her look like a clown, a mocking clown. Olivia closed her Time and tossed it onto the table, maintaining her gaze. "Let's get a couple of things straight." She glanced at the woman's name placard. "Lisa. Number 1, Dave isn't my father. Number 2, I kinda outgrew coloring books like 15 years ago. Number 3, Olivia stopped. She hadn't realized she'd stood up and moved forward as she spoke. She now stood on her tiptoes, leaning over the high counter, palms pressed against the oak surface. Although the woman was easily twice Olivia's size, she melted into her chair, mouth shrunken into a thin red pout. But it was her eyes that deflated Olivia. They swallowed up the woman's face, pupils dilating into black holes. Olivia lowered her heels to the floor, walked back to her seat, and stared down at her hands. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry," Lisa said. Her voice sounded small and far away. "I just assumed, you can't be more than 5 feet tall." 4'11", Olivia didn't look up. "It's okay. Anyone can make a mistake. You're not the first." She stared at her hands, but all she could see were Lisa's eyes, black eating up pools of blue until nothing remained. Olivia understood that blackness. She carried it in the hollow of her rib cage since before she could remember.
Sorry, I'm out of directions. Hi. I'm going to read a couple poems, but normally I write essays, but I'm going to branch out, I guess. Teresa's my one cheerleader. I stare out this is called This Land. I stare out the window, surveying this land, this dismal and unfertile acreage, and I dream of a day it will once again be lush and vibrant, colored with the beauty of summer and cut perfectly patterned with care like the checkerboard of a baseball field. But right now, looking out, hope of the coming of spring is hard to imagine, and I can only question why life is filled, leaved with sorrow. The scenery is both captivating and nauseating. My heart is heavy today, heavy with love and gratitude and pain and fear of unknown things to come, and they will come. I miss you today, more so than any other day. You like the collective, and you like the person, like the uniqueness of your soul. I long to wash away the sadness, the hurt that cannot be undone. The winter wind seems to penetrate right through the sinews threads of my heart. Deep in the inner reachings of my mind, I remember there is a seamstress among us. My life plays out like the notes of a song across bar after bar, and I'm floating, staccato-like, toward the refrain. I'm in need of the coda. Flashes of time warm my soul and curdle my blood simultaneously. The ping of a hammer is close, although I cannot put my finger on where the sound is coming from. It seems to cloak me in its warmth and truth and honesty. I long for a more innocent time, a time of wooden swords, of green scrubs, of candles that burn so strong they sting the very core of my body and are recognizable only by the feeling of peace and unknown turmoil they bring just around the corner. I see the pain behind his eyes and relate, the kind of relating that draws the pit of my stomach up to the tip of my tongue. I love every disturbing minute of this despair-laden life. A life of defense has left me defenseless. This door that opens up to this land draws me near. So I press my face up against the glass. In the fog that my breath creates, I picture myself as Alice. On the other side of the door is where I need to be, but I don't fit. The perspective of my size in comparison to the door is blinding, overwhelming. I shuffle through the memories in my mind to pluck out which one will change my size. One memory to make me smaller, one to make me larger. I cannot fake love. The compassionate part won't let me. The loneliness in me wishes it weren't so. It's overwhelming and my mind is running a race my heart can't compete with. I can no longer pretend. I wish someone would chip off the slag and reveal me. Unveil the welded, bound up human underneath. So I wait and do nothing and contemplate being just east of Eden and ruminate on how I belong here in this very moment of time and space and pain. To intoxicate you would be a dream, and I wonder if when you pass me in the street, if you see my spark and know how hard I've worked to get it and how easy it is to lose it. The contentment is intoxicating. The world and I flourish together, and the beaten down, snow-covered land is not yet transformed. But in this moment, I welcome this pain, this land, this journey, and revel in the hope of these new mended stitches brings. This one's called Flash of Sanity. I don't know who I am, but I know exactly who I am today. The pain created is thick. The obviousness of the situation is exhausting. Everyone is speaking and it sounds like they have jars in their mouths, but I struggle to interpret. The smell of jasmine is stinging my nostrils. There's a metronome in my chest and my feet can't keep time. There's a man stuck on an 8-track and he's lost making his way around the record player. I hear a good friend at the door, so I open it, and my life walks out. They enter, and it's June, and I feel the heat in the air, but the foot tracks in the snow send my mind elsewhere. I witness the birth of a dream, and the death of many, and want it all. Ode to Joy is hummed in my ear, and I imagine the rape of a virgin, and understand that nothing matters. Good is blindfolded, and I cannot make you see what I want you to see. Someone takes my hand, and I jump through 10 hoops to get 2 feet. I have 2 feet, and the bottoms are black like I've walked on freshly laid tar, and the cigarette, being pulled closely to my split lip, is inhaled, and suddenly the world becomes clear, as if the shaken snow globe has been set down, and the background of the globe is Mount Rushmore and it's burning. And there's a fire in my womb put out suddenly with a bucket of tears. I never want what I want. The ceiling fan shakes off the hook and falls to the ground. I crawl in the crater it created. I'm led down the path by a worm as if something is fishing for my soul.
I don't know.
One just broke up. To my life. For years I lived all alone without somebody to call my own. And you came into my life. So I got to come alive. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. Thank you for all the things you do. Sorry for the times I did you wrong. Want to marry to this job. But everything you mean the world to me. Can't wait to live. Still for eternity.
Thanks, Storm. You just like do that, it's fine. You can hear me.
You can just go like this. Check it out. There you go.
Look. Words. Okay. These are a couple of poems that come from a sequence that I wrote a little while ago. My name's Teresa. This one is called On the Construction of a Commercial Lot. Cement tumbles inside a cylinder, like the pudding Mom used to mix on the Saturday before Easter. Loud like ground gravel under our tennis shoes in the climax of an overtime street hockey game. Flow congeals in tubing, nothing a stick won't fix. Mid-pour, leafy weed buds torn from air. No more will nature thrive unchecked in the old lot. Concrete gives comfort, the illusion of wealth, on a street where we used to play hockey on Sundays with smashed pop can pucks. The illusion of control over weeds that will resurface, sure as Jesus rose. Smooth over this alien ground. Scrape curdled lumps off the lip of the bucket. Crawl forward 3 feet on your knees. Carry on throughout life in a neon vest. Okay. This one's called Vacation. 1. Cars on the freeway with places to be. Urgency drives up RPMs. Motors crank and turn, churn out ever more MPGs. Rage flares between bumper and fender. Every minute wasted in a jam, a hassle. What does it mean to relax? 2. Once, on a year's vacation time, 4 days is all it was, half pay, we drove 1,300 miles out to Cali, to the bay, swam backward in time, breathed fish and seaweed smell, and, in the face of something new, forgot the exhaust it took to get there. Dad took his shirt off and taught us to jump, fearless, into each wave. Let the ocean encircle us with its might. He laughed and dumped Mom under when her mouth was grinning open. Sunburnt with sand in our hair, we stopped to fill up on our way home. Dad came back to the car with chips, ice cream, and a yellow snow globe. It had round flakes falling to the ocean and a beach lined with shaded towels. He shook it, held it out to us, gentle, and I understood why Mom married him.
0. 1, 2, 3. I met her as just 14, when she had cigarette withdrawal, and had been sober from self-confidence for who knows how long. She clothed her arms in a sleeve of insults which she herself had written like a cast to heal a cast out. I wanted her to have a friend, so I asked for a sleeve of my own. She tattooed my skin with a Sharpie and penetrated the bone, and there I learned that we are our own worst critics. 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. Half a life ago, she was sure that dying young was a better alternative. She was too young to know. She was too young to tie a good knot. She was too young to die. 8, 9, 10, 11. She wears a bandana out of her back pocket.
It hangs like a limp flag. It's a memorial 6 feet above her dearly departed. What's odd is that her best friend used to do the same thing. Used to. 12, 13, 14, 15. After a week, I considered adopting her. I'm 19, and I imagine that would have felt like raising a teenage girl version of me. To make things too simple, we both like snapbacks and alternative rock. She dropped out of school, but still wants to be an MD. I swear, it's like she imprisons herself, but her dreams just pick the lock. 16, 17, 18. I've seen there's 19 scars below each hand where a sharpened edge plowed depression. There's a chance that any story is made with lying, but what no one else seemed to understand is that even if it's a cry for attention, you can still tell she's been crying. 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. She said her friends call her 0. She asked me to call her 0. On my arm, she wrote, "You're perfect, 0. No, my friend. I just don't wear mine on my sleeves. On the 7th day, the children of God slumped at rest on long wooden benches. Then the holy water simmered out of its basin, rising up the yellowing walls and joining with an ungodly steam of perspiration thick enough to chew the gat of the forehead and the armpit. Bibles were fanned, ties were slackened as the congregation suffocated, or rather, drowned in their pews. As the Reverend commenced, the foul and unholy cloud condensed in his mouth and misted over the pulpit. Thus the water cycle and organized religion.
That's it, everybody. Let's thank Johnny one more time. Nice session. Thank yourselves one more time.
Thank the readers.
Now put your chairs away and go home.
Thank you.